placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct.
We are an independent podcast that focuses on the worst of military crimes and the victims and the voices left behind in their wake.
Views by the hosts and guests are our own and do not reflect those of our sponsors or employers.
We do our best with accuracy, but please rely on this information at your own risk.
Episode may contain sensitive subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
When Justice Goes AWOL is not affiliated with the military in any way.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's it going today? My name's Nicole Charcoti, and welcome to another episode of When Justice Goes AWOL. Last week, we had an interview with the lovely Michelle Villarreal about the modern problems that many veterans are facing these days. The fact that so many veterans fight for this country and pay into their benefits with their bodies, and it takes a toll on them, it is really disheartening to see how difficult many of these services can be to get. And with the recent government shutdown, a lot of the elderly veterans were feeling the pain the most, people that have already served and should have been able to access their benefits, but were not. Thankfully, in the same week as Veterans Day, the shutdown was lifted, so many of those people now have services back, but are still unable to get them. It goes to show how important a lot of these services are, especially when people do leave the military and count on things like medical benefits, housing, and even things as basic as food. Today we're taking a closer look at the case of Michael Stockin, a former professional at Madigan Army Medical Center who worked as an anesthesiologist. Now, a lot of times sexual assault cases are not taken that seriously because a lot of the offenders are well-standing citizens, they have a reputation in the communities that they live in, and a lot do pick professions where they get to work with a lot of vulnerable people, and the vulnerable people in this case were injured male soldiers. The Army started an investigation into multiple complaints of sexual assault with Michael Stockin, and it actually led to him being reassigned to administrative duties. Michael Stockin also had multiple allegations of sexual misconduct with patients in February of 2022. Multiple people came forward, but a lot of these crimes were not reported by higher-ups. In fact, there were a total of 41 allegations. The Army finally commenced an investigation into these allegations, and it turned out being worse than anybody thought. Michael Stockin ended up pleading guilty to 36 abusive sexual contact cases and 5 cases for indecent viewing. After pleading guilty to his crimes, he was eventually sentenced to more than 13 years in prison to be served in Leavenworth. Then we go back into the allegations and how long this was basically allowed to continue under the Army's watchful eye. And civil litigations are still going on behalf of Christine Dunn. Now, while serving as an attorney for all these men, Christine Dunn is also very active in advocating for representing the rights of victims of sexual assault. She also serves as co-chair for a victim sexual assault rights group. So she is very active in the community of protecting people. She represented 26 victims, saying that the perpetrator was held accountable, and now it's the Army's turn for the negligence in their addressing this crime. Since the duration of Michael Stockin's offenses went over the course of many years, many victims did complain to higher-ups in the military, and many were either dismissed, downplayed, or ignored. Josh Connolly from Protect Our Defenders even went so far as to say that this is a broken system. It re-traumatizes victims and erodes trust in military leadership. And that is one of the consequences of not taking these crimes seriously enough. And the fact is that it is true that a lot of survivors have to take to the media in order to get their voices even heard, which is appalling in itself. We need to take these crimes more seriously if they're going to be dealt with, and the perpetrators held accountable. Faith in the military has always been important, but faith in soldiers' trust that their leader is going to have their backs if someone assaults them is important too. Especially when it comes to sexual assault cases, be it against men, women, or especially children, we need reform that ensures accountability is held for everybody who is made aware of these crimes and doesn't do anything to either stop them or investigate them. You think the number of sexual assault cases among women and children are underreported? Think about all the men that do not come forward because it goes against, quote, the title of what a soldier is supposed to be. But in this case, the abuse was direct, the abuse was deliberate, and the abuse came from somebody who they should have been able to trust. By ensuring more accountability and putting more priority on survivor care, we will ultimately restore faith in our armed forces that was either lost or misplaced because of crimes like these, so that it acts as a deterrent and we don't just look at it in hindsight and say, well, more could have been done. We need reform that actually prioritizes survivor care, that we have resources available to survivors of sexual assault, violence, military, civilian, or otherwise. It is not fair that so many civilians are assaulted by members of the military, and there are no civil resources for them. Cases like these show that sexual violence in the military still is a crisis, and it's going to continue to be a crisis unless we address it effectively. The one thing that has frustrated me probably the most about doing this podcast is the people I have talked to, the survivors that I have talked to, and their concerns and their voices being ignored either until it's too late or even after the fact. And there's no validation that comes with that. It creates resentment, it creates anger, it creates hatred. You can't restore faith in a broken system that way. Sexual assault in the military is a crisis that does need to be taken more seriously. It undermines the integrity of our armed forces. It creates victim blaming. It creates so many problems that the public sees, and nothing is still done. Nothing is done to correct it. It boils down to the gross negligence of the higher-ups in the military that these crimes were reported to, and nothing was done on account of that. And I will bet you a lot of those higher-ups still have their positions, if not were promoted already. Or transferred out. They do that too when somebody screws up and they don't want the scrutiny of it. Well, next week what I'll be up to in light of a case coming up local to our courts, Levi Austin Frakes and Charles Ethan Fields, two former soldiers at JBLM who were caught behaving badly on base. We will be going over what Thurston County Sheriff's Office and CID agents found once they busted the residence that these two guys were found at, and what groups we should be on the lookout for, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm Nicole Charcoti, and this has been When Justice Goes AWOL. Dress nice, folks. Court's coming up.